I have been wondering where Stephen A. Smith has been. Yes, I've been wondering where he has been on this particular issue.
53 lives. 53 in one weekend. It's not the first time this has happened. It's been happening year after year after year. Chicago, St. Louis, Baltimore, the list goes on and on. Where's the noise at? Where's the protests? Where's mainstream media talking about that?
What is up, guys? John Claymore here. I just got back home from being out of town the last few days, and of course the trip did me some good, but I come home and I see Stephen A. Smith finally speaking out on something that he's probably spoken out on a lot of times, especially behind closed doors, but obviously he's not allowed to do that at ESPN, that they're being buck the narrative, and actually talk about what's really and truly going on in the streets of the larger cities of the United States of America. Now, before we talk about this is going to be a relatively lengthy video. It's going to be pretty well clip heavy, but I want you guys to know right now, I have made a lot of videos on Stephen A. Smith. I do not dislike Stephen A. Smith. I never have disliked Stephen A. Smith, but I do dislike sometimes the way he comes off. And of course, the things that he has said in his past that kind of came off as a little bit race baity. I got to be a little bit clean here. Just because YouTube removed the guidelines on this particular topic here does not mean that they will not be removing the guidelines when it comes to speech itself. So obviously, we got a great deal to talk about. Now, guys, I did a video a while back on the murders in Chicago over Memorial Day weekend. And the mayor, Brandon Johnson's response and how it was that he basically said, well, the criminals were traumatized. A pretty weak response. He was talking about those who actually committed the crime, talking about they were traumatized by the situation. Now, I'm going to be leaving a couple of additional videos and some additional links in the description box as always to go along with this one. But we need to provide some actual clarity here. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because I initially wanted to open up the video with this clip here.
Only now, at the end, do you understand?
However, I do not think it is too late. And what I mean by that is I don't think it's too late for an entire race of people to save themselves. Obviously, and this is right, and like I said, I've talked this on several occasions. I only ask you that you give me your ear, especially if you were turned out by me saying save yourself. Now, I did a video a while back on the BRT. I've got to say it that way because that topic right there is still censored here on YouTube. I talked about the abortion rate in the black community. I talked about the crime and murder rate. And I talked about the situation going on at the southern border. And, of course, I've done several videos on Chicago citizens, Chicago voters being very upset about that, primarily black voters, because they obviously see that the city is diverting all their resources or reverting all their resources to the illegals coming in. Obviously making life much, much more difficult in these communities because now, as you guys can see, forced assimilation is not exactly working. And obviously people, when you're being forced, they're not going to actually assimilate with one another. But Stephen A. said a lot of very, let's just say he had some pretty provocative things to say that I've been waiting for him to say for a while. And I've been wondering where this version of Stephen A. Smith is at. Now, with that right there being said, I'm going to roll the first part of this, and then I'm going to come back on the other side and provide some additional commentary. This clip right here is roughly right around 2 minutes long. Like I said before, it's going to be a relatively clip-heavy video. Make sure you guys pay attention to what he has to say, and I will be there to interpret a little bit more as we go through this video.
Memorial Day tragedy is what they call it. It's nothing new. In this particular instance, 9 people were shot, including a 1-year-old child in Hollywood, Florida, during an altercation Monday night between 2 groups near a busy area of the beach, according to officials. The gunfire that rang out this Memorial Day weekend was part of at least 262 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year. 262. For those of you who've forgotten, a mass shooting is defined as one in which at least 4 people are shot, excluding the shooter. The injured ranged in age from 1 year of age to 65 years of age. And by the ways, the scene joins the list of other common destinations that have been the setting of gun violence thus far this year. That includes schools, grocery stores, birthday parties, and malls. I believe in Queens, New York, the other day, a man got into an argument with his nephew, pulled out his gun, shot him 8 times, and then tried to shoot his niece. I'm looking at some of the cities where these mass shootings have taken place. Monterey Park, California. Allen, Texas. Half Moon Bay, California. Cedar City, Utah. Goshen, California, or Goshen. Coldwater, Mississippi. Henriette, Oklahoma. Nashville, Texas. Not Tennessee, Nashville, Texas. Louisville, Kentucky. And not Cleveland, Ohio, but Cleveland, Texas. You know what struck me? California got strict gun laws. Texas doesn't. There's been shootings in New York, New Jersey. There's been shootings in Florida. There's been shootings in Colorado. There's been shootings in Texas. There's been shootings in Utah. There's been shootings in California. This is some serious stuff. And I said it the other day, and I'll say it again. Megyn Kelly, who used to work at Fox News, when she made her quote that put everybody in an uproar, I didn't disagree with her. She said she got sick and tired of people talking about gun laws or gun control because you ain't getting it. There's over 330 Americans in the United States of America. There's over 330 million Americans in the United States of America. There's over 400 million guns. Over 400 million guns. I know a couple of people that just came from Cuba. Guns ain't allowed there. Gun laws are strict in a lot of different places. Not in the United States of America. It varies from state to state. But the fact of the matter is the bad guys always end up having them, which is why I'm not a hard and fast dude against Second Amendment rights. I believe in some cases people should have guns. I don't think you need AR-15 rifles, AK-47s, or anything like that. But I do think that you should have the ability to protect yourself because the police ain't going to always get there in time. I can agree with that. Think you should be licensed. I think you should be trained so you know how to use it. And you don't harm anybody but the intended party. And only should be used in self-defense. But the reality of the situation is I got a deeper issue on my mind. And I've tried to avoid this subject, but I can't. Because you see, recently.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and answer that last bit really quick. Gun control is not going to happen. If anything, it sounds more to me like an argument for guns. It sounds more like of an argument for, I don't know, like open, concealed, maybe constitutional carry in the city of Chicago. But of course, libs, they have this thing about not wanting to let people arm themselves, protect themselves against others, because you see, bad guys always find a way to get guns. It's just the way that it is. So obviously, you need to be able to arm and protect yourself. Something else, I'm going to show you guys a graph here in a second of some of the most dangerous cities in the world itself. And you'll notice that a lot of these places actually have extremely restrictive gun control laws, meaning that you can't arm yourself. You can't defend yourself against somebody with a knife. You can't defend yourself against somebody with a club. It's pretty much that way, but yet somehow or another, they love to look at the United States, which, by the way, in some of these cases, from what I saw in some of these cities, and by the way, I'm not saying these places are not dirty, dingy, and they're not dangerous. I'm not saying that at all. They are very, very dangerous, very, very dirty and dingy. I'm just pointing out the fact that there are other cities out there in the world that have extremely restrictive gun laws that actually have just as much or just as many murders. A lot of people get killed during robberies. People get stabbed. People get beat to death. It sounds to me like you may want some type of firearm to protect yourself in these areas. I'm just throwing that out. Another note to go on top of this, I think it was Dr. Carol Swain. I think she was the one who pointed out that gun control at its very, very beginning was actually racist. I just figured I'd throw that out there because the Democrats in the South, when they had a lot of troops coming home, of course, a lot of black troops when they came home, it made it easier to lynch them if the guns were taken away from them. As I've always said before, red flag laws could potentially be racist as hell, and obviously this is a bit of a red flag to the Democratic Party and the lib establishment, which, by the way, the lib establishment from the old Civil War is still very, very much in charge in these cities. They just changed their way of doing things, okay? They didn't change. They just changed their way of approaching. It's almost like Malcolm X said a long time ago, you got to be wary of the white liberal. You really and truly have to be wary of the white liberal. The difference is that the white conservative is a lot more principled, and you kind of already know where he's coming from, whereas the white liberal will pretend to be your friend, which, by the way, Stephen A. Smith does, in fact, bring up in this video. Just want you guys to know that. He brings up the fact that he's a Malcolm X fan, but he obviously missed the part about white liberals, which kind of makes me question why he even brought it up. I'm showing you guys a graph right now of the most dangerous cities in the world. You see, a lot of times we talk about Chicago, New York, LA. We oftentimes forget about St. Louis. We oftentimes forget about Baltimore. And of course, you're going to find out that most of these cities have the same type of leadership. As I've been saying before, BRT is the more likely thing that is going on rather than WRT. Don't worry, I'm going to be remaking that project at a later date, much more advanced. Probably a little bit more to the point. I kind of think that project, which by the way will be left in the description box of this video, may have been a little bit longer than it needed to be, and I think it may have been a little bit too much, let's just say a little bit more article heavy rather than stats heavy, but still at the same time though, that video will be coming out in the future. But let me say this though. When you look at all this, you oftentimes see that a lot of these very violent cities have actually got much higher murder rates than some of the cities here in the United States. They have something that a lot of these very blue cities have. They have extremely restrictive gun laws. Now, Stephen A. does bring up guns in this video here. I personally believe it's more culture related. And I don't think he goes on the whole gun control thing, even though he's somewhat in favor of it. But he basically asserts that he does not think the guns are the problem. He doesn't seem to understand what the problem is. And I've been saying for a while that I think culture and conditions are actually what's driving all the violence, especially in the very large cities. Some people love to point to poverty. I kind of include that when it comes to overall conditions. However, I've got to give credit to Sean Fitzgerald. He's obviously much better at this topic. However, me being a man from the South and being around people of color, I don't want to see an entire race of people get completely wiped off this earth. You guys can say white savior, whatever the hell makes you feel good. I really and truly don't care. But I also don't want to see any race get wiped off the planet, because quite frankly, we are all one race, the human race. It just happens to be that some of us are born with black skin. Some of us have brown skin. Some of us has more a yellowish tint. Some of us have a reddish tint. Some of us have a white tint. We are all the same race. It is the way things are. And I can already hear the far left radicals coming in the comment section screaming racist, bigot. And meanwhile, I am telling you what the hell is going on. And I'm telling you guys what needs to be fixed. And I'm telling you that Stephen A. Smith is 100% correct in this video, which by the way, we will watch more of here in a second. But here's the thing though. Has anything in these cities improved for a long time? I mean, Chicago has not had a Republican mayor since 1930, since 1920s, 1930s. I'm not saying Republicans would fix it. I'm not saying that at all. However, you've been voting for the same Democrats over and over and over and over and over again, and you got to ask yourself a question. Has anything changed? Has anything gotten any better? I mean, seriously, has anything gotten any better? Of course, this also includes some cities in the South. You could also throw Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas. You could probably throw Phoenix, Arizona in there. All these areas are crime-ridden. Every single one of these areas have got something in common. Extremely restrictive gun laws, black mayors, and of course, as you guys have seen with Chicago, a lot of these places are having assimilation issues due to the fact that the southern border is open completely. Now, we'll talk more about that in my project that I have on BRT, or my remade project on BRT. Basically, think of it as a remastered version. But the thing is this right here. You got to ask yourself a question. Why in the world do you keep voting for the same nonsense? We'll be talking about that in video 2 of the day, which, by the way, will come out tomorrow. I'm going to be pretty busy, so obviously I've got to post these videos early. But you got to ask yourself a question. What the hell has changed? Has anything changed? It doesn't look to me like anything has changed at all. If anything, things are getting a lot worse. And as I have said on multiple occasions, with the mass influx of migrants coming in, it's only going to get a lot worse. Pay very close attention. Next 2 minutes.
As a black man. Recently, we've seen stories emanating out of California and various other places on the subject of reparations. Slavery, Jim Crow laws, and other incendiary things that existed to pigeonhole, marginalize, and suppress and oppress minorities in this country. We know it's real. I'm not going to belabor it. But when I bring up something like reparations, although I believe there is a case many in this country can make for it, particularly since reparations was paid to Japan in the aftermath of the atom bomb being dropped on Hiroshima. The fact of the matter is that at this particular moment in time, that ain't on my mind. My point is that if we're going to bring up subjects like this, and we're going to bring up subjects like police brutality or brutality on the part of some police officers, as I like to say, when we going to look at ourselves when it comes to black people being killed in the streets of America? I don't even want to get into what happened in Chicago, but I have no choice. This past Memorial Day weekend, from Friday to Monday, at least 53 people were shot, 11 fatally, according to police. If one black person was killed by the police, we'd raise holy hell, and in some cases, there'd be riots in the streets. And damn it, I'm not here to sit up there and blame anybody for that, because I'm tired of the nonsense that we've seen going on in the streets aimed at black Americans. That's not where I'm going. What I'm saying is, where's the due diligence when it comes to putting a spotlight on what we're doing to each other? Because this shit is pissing me off.
Now, guys, I have talked about reparations on several occasions on this channel. I have talked about why it is that it just would not work, and why it is at the end of the day, the amount of money that people are demanding is just not going to, let's just say, be a living wage. Also, it would be extremely expensive, especially to the taxpayer. It would also be extremely expensive to those who are minorities as well. And to go on top of that, not only is that there the case, but you're also making people who have absolutely nothing to do with slavery in their actual line as far as ancestry is concerned. You're actually forcing them to pay for something that they are not responsible for. As a matter of fact, I've been saying for a while that anybody who's living today is not responsible for what happened in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or even in this in the past century. Okay, I've talked about it on several occasions, but there are a lot of people out there who just believe money just grows on trees. I have no idea where they got that from, but still at the same time, we'll probably discuss that at a later date. But there's something else too that needs to be said. I have also said on multiple occasions that, yes, you've actually already received reparations. It was called the Great Society Plan. There's been several acts that have been enacted. One of them, of course, was the First Step Act, where they actually focused on community zones, actual opportunity sections, put more money into certain communities. I think Trump also had the Platinum Plan that he was trying to unveil and trying to get out there, that he actually wanted to get done in 2020 if he had gotten reelected, which, like I said before, very, very funny how it is now we can talk about that year, but of course we're still getting censored for certain words up here or the way they're actually said. I'll digress, though, for the purpose of this video. Fact of the matter is this right here. Reparations is not going to fix anything. And I've also said at the same time, to go on top of that there, maybe what you should do is look more at people like, say, LeBron James, the very, very, let's just say the very, very wealthy African-American men who play basketball, football. Why don't you ask them to actually put money into those communities? Stephen A. Smith, you yourself could do that. You make about $12.7 million a year. Why don't you give about $1.2 million of that? But of course, at the same time, though, we got to blame rich people. We got to blame the top 1%, even though those right there are the people who donate the most to charities here in this country. Some of those charities also include historically black colleges. By the way, I need to say this, and this is going to come up again in this video. BLM just recently filed for bankruptcy. So if you bought yourself a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, just go ahead and know that you gave your money to a cause that would eventually run out of money, and for the most part just does not exist. Let's go ahead and roll some more of this.
Nothing else matters if we're dead. Nothing else matters if we're killing each other. Forget about what we deserve. Some people have different forms of reparations. They want money from the government, even though the government's national debt is at $31.4 trillion as of last month. I hear you, though. Because, damn it, if we come up with money to give to Ukraine, which I'm not opposed to, and we come up with money to take care of immigrants coming into our borders, and we come up with money every time we feel the need to address one issue or another that happens in this country, we damn sure could come up with money for our minority populace that contributed to the upliftment of this country, that was marginalized and demonized and ostracized and oppressed for years. So nobody's trying to sit up there and say that we don't deserve something. My point is, it's debatable as to what that could be. It could be making sure the economy flourishes and that there's job opportunities. It could be by contributing to education and enabling folks that otherwise couldn't afford an education to make sure they get educated so we can uplift our society. There's a variety of ways that reparations could take place. But it doesn't matter if we're dead. It doesn't matter. Especially at our own hands. And for those of you out there, especially the white people, that's way to go, Stephen. Hey, bravo, bravo. You know what I'm saying? Because something needs to be said. Y'all kill each other too. White folks kill white folks. Hispanic folks kill Hispanic folks. Black folks killing black folks ain't no different than what other communities are doing to themselves. It's just that your numbers are greater. If you are the Hispanic population in the United States of America and you make up 17% of the population, and by the year 2030, the Census Bureau reports says you're going to make up 30% of the population. Well, guess what? When you die, from a numbers perspective, it doesn't have as a profound of an effect as it does to the black community. If you're a white community and you're making up 60% of the population and you kill one another, it doesn't have as detrimental of effect numbers-wise as it does on a black community. Because the black community as of 2021 made up 12.5% of the U.S. population. It was once 15. It did it down to 14 and a half.
Outside of local outlets, nobody seems to report on this. Nobody seems to report on what's going on in Chicago and New York as far as crime is concerned. Also, something else, too, I've been telling you guys for a long time now that BLM really and truly does not care about black people. They never really truly have. It's an organization that was being ran by two paid Marxists, meaning they weren't even really and truly actual Marxists. They even said that they were paid. What they said was that they were trained Marxists. And they pretty much told you that we're being paid to be Marxists. So what did they do with the money that they got? They went out there and bought a bunch of homes. Of course, they did it in white communities, which should really and truly be a massive red flag right there, because obviously they embraced capitalism after telling you that they were a bunch of communists. It's just the way these people are. It was a great big giant money scheme. They actually made money off the deaths of black people. And now they are completely bankrupt. As I said before, if you bought a Black Lives Matter shirt, you need to understand that you actually paid money to an entity that would eventually go completely bankrupt. You don't see any outrage over what happens in Chicago or New York or LA or Dallas or St. Louis or Baltimore. You're not going to see that because obviously the media is not going to care about that. They care about one incident involving a cop shooting a black person. It's normally a white person who has to shoot a black person, which, by the way, if you actually look at statistics, you actually find out that white cops are actually less likely to try to shoot a black individual, probably due to the fact that the media would go completely crazy and completely destroy a person's reputation. I would actually look into the Tiana Brawley case because one of the police officers got so ran down in that hoax that they eventually took their own lives. That, by the way, was in fact a full-blown hoax, but yet for whatever reason, they keep pitching it out there like it is not. It is one of the many cases where Al Sharpton got his name. Of course, that there being when Al Sharpton was fat as a hog. Fact of the matter is that this has been going on for a while. Somebody will come out there and they will race bait and they'll bring it to the media. But of course, it always takes a certain particular case. It always takes that one case to get it out there. But yet, for whatever reason, they don't want to talk about all the violence that occurs every day or the fact that over 50 were shot on Memorial Day weekend in Chicago. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about the one case where a white cop shot a black person because guess what? Only then is it actually profitable. We got more to watch, another minute and a half. Make sure you guys pay very close.
53 lives. 53 in one weekend. It's not the first time this has happened. It's been happening year after year after year. Chicago, St. Louis, Baltimore, the list goes on and on. Where's the noise at? Where's the protests? Where's mainstream media talking about that? Where is it? That's what I want to know. Because let me tell you something. It's less than 13%. We damn near on the verge of becoming an endangered species. What are we going to do about it? This is why I preach about the importance of nonviolence. And I'm a Malcolm X kind of dude more so than Martin Luther King. But you got to make sense. And you got to understand what the end game is and where do you win when violence is the answer. And all I mean by that, MLK compared to Malcolm X, I'm talking about an eye for an eye.
Okay, guys, I let that one go on a little bit longer than I should have, but I decided I'd go ahead and let Stephen A. kind of finish out his little spiel. Look, let me go ahead and say this really quick. As I have said before, what happens in those communities when one white cop shoots a black criminal, of course, somebody who's actually attacking or whatever in self-defense, which, by the way, the white cop always hesitates to do so because of the possible media exposure. That is when people like BLM and Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and them, all the race hustlers, Benjamin Crump, it's when they decide to show up. Speaking of the New York City bike hearings, I figured I'd go ahead and throw this out here. They tried to get an attorney, that right there being the two youths and the youth's sister, and they contacted Benjamin Crump's office, and then Benjamin Crump, apparently the word is that Crump actually referred them to somebody else, meaning he did not want to take it, which means that obviously that case was pretty weak. I just figured I'd throw that out there. But the thing is this right here, it's only going to be mentioned when it's profitable. It's only going to be mentioned when it's actually profitable to these people. And yet somehow or another they found a way to bungle their finances, and now they're bankrupt. Even when they were out there race hustling, they weren't doing any good to the black community. As Stephen A. Smith said there before, the actual black population itself has actually shrunk. It's not 14%, it's 13%. In some cases, you could even argue that it's only about 12% of the population. And yes, white people kill one another off as well, as he mentioned it. But number one, they're not killing one another off at the rate that African Americans are killing themselves off. And to go on top of that, there's much, let's just say there are much smaller numbers of African Americans in this country, mostly in the much larger inner cities of the United States and here in the Southeast where I live at. Fact of the matter is that we are watching a race completely kill itself off. It's sad. Nobody wants this to happen. And right now, the current leadership is trying to replace you with those from the border. That's what they're simply trying to do. I talked about this on several occasions. Look, let's think about something really quick, all right? And I don't want to be hyperbolic, and I'm going to go ahead and end the video on this note here, but I want you to kind of think about this, all right? Now, I got a bit of a tick here where I kind of pull my pants up while I'm talking, but I want you guys to just kind of think about this really quick. You have an extremely high abortion rate. You have an extremely high amount of single mothers right now. No fathers in the community. Obviously, child support's not getting paid. Kids are not being taken care of. Many a young black youth are getting jailed. Situations are desperate in these cities, mostly ran by Democrats. You're looking at overall living conditions. Poor living conditions, of course, lead to less doctor visits, lead to less people actually working on you, meaning that you're eventually just going to become much more medicated, which is not exactly good for the psyche, not exactly good for the brain, the body, or the soul. When you take medications like that, only if you're prescribed medication, if you have like an ailment or something like that. But if you're taking massive amounts of painkillers, it's just not going to help out, which, by the way, is something that doctors will do if you're actually poor and you can't really afford anything. I'll just give you something for the pain. You factor in the drugs that are coming in. You factor in the death rate. You factor in the massive death rate mostly committed in black-on-black crime. You look at the abortion rate being so extremely high for African-American women. You're looking at the possibility of an entire population being stunted, that right there being the black race. Stephen A. Smith is basically making a plea to you out there that you are wiping yourselves out, and quite frankly, you cannot afford to do that. Now, I wanted to start this video out with that line that you guys saw earlier from the Emperor from Star Wars, basically saying, only now at the end do you understand. But the fact of the matter is this right here. It's never really and truly the end. You can turn this thing around. I'm not telling you to go out there and vote Republican or anything like that. I'm not telling you to go vote Democrat or Independent. What I'm telling you to do is stop putting these woke prosecutors, stop putting these woke DAs out there. These woke DAs are letting the criminals leave. They're not even going to prison. They're not even serving any time. Next thing you know, when they get out, guess what the hell happens? We find out that 2 or 3 more black youths got killed. More than likely, probably a white youth got killed in the process, or a Hispanic youth got killed in the process. Or like in the case of San Francisco, an Asian youth got killed in the process. Actually vote for people who are tough on crime. If you can get their situation under control, then guess what? The environment becomes better for opportunity zones. It becomes better for jobs. It becomes a better overall environment itself. When the neighborhoods eventually start to look better and money starts going in the neighborhoods, and people can actually defend themselves. Like I said before, you should be voting for your right to carry, your right to own a firearm, so that way you can protect yourself. You have an actual honest to God chance at rebounding and stopping this ridiculous cycle of axing yourself off this earth. I say what I say out of love. A lot of people will come in here and scream racist, bigot, or whatever. That is not how I feel. I actually love people. It is the reason why it is that I do these videos and say what it is that I say. And I can only ask you guys to spread the word on this. I agree 100% with Stephen A. Smith, a man that I normally call out for BS, but in this case right here, he is 100% correct. Just figure I'd leave it at that. Guys, the next video tomorrow will be about the situation in Oakland. Once again, in the case of you get what you vote for. Make sure you guys hit that like button for the algorithm. Make sure you guys also share this video. If you're new to this channel, if you think I've earned your subscription, make sure you guys please hit the subscribe button. Click on the notifications bell. Still, send this video out. Comment in the comment section. We'd love to hear what you guys have got to say. Even if it's a negative comment, please leave it in there. But please share this video. I will see you guys later. There'll be another video coming out tomorrow to go on top of this about the situation in Oakland. I'll see you then.